The fire is warm, the night is cold, and I have a story that simply must be told.
I am Norman G. Rock, and you are watching Histropedia.
All right, let's dive right into this explainer. You know, for decades, stories of flying saucers and alien abductions have just completely captivated our collective imagination. But when we pull back the curtain of pop culture and actually apply a rigorous scientific lens to these accounts, a really fascinating alternate narrative starts to emerge. So today, we're going to use the hard data, the historical records, and the science of human psychology to decode the anatomy of a myth. Okay, do me a favor. Just take a quick second and picture an alien in your head. Got it? Chances are you're picturing a very specific creature. You know, a small being with smooth gray skin, a massive bulbous bald head, barely any nose, and those giant, haunting, black, almond-shaped eyes. We call this the gray alien. But seriously, ask yourself, how did this highly specific image become so universally ingrained in our culture? Is it because thousands of people have encountered the exact same biological entity? Or is there a much more earthbound explanation for this shared phenomenon?
Section 1. The Alien Archetype. So to figure out where this classic alien look actually comes from, we have to rewind way before the flying saucer craze of the 1940s. All the way back in 1893, Victorian author H.G. Wells laid the biological groundwork for how we imagined advanced beings. He wrote this essay called The Man of the Year Million, where he speculated that as humans evolved, our reliance on technology would make our bodies frail and weak, while our brains would grow massive just to accommodate all that advanced intellect. This projection of like a humanity plus created a template for us. We just began to associate hairless, large-headed, frail beings with supreme futuristic intelligence. The gray alien isn't just a random monster, it's literally a psychocultural expression of what modern humans think ultimate intelligence looks like.
Moving right along to Section 2, Roswell and the Espionage Truth. Let's talk about the big one, Roswell. Let me walk you through the incredibly chaotic few days in 1947 that pretty much birthed the modern UFO conspiracy. In early July, a ranch foreman named Mac Brazel found a scattering of strange, incredibly lightweight debris on his property. By July 8, boom, the local Army airfield issues an explosive press release announcing they had captured a flying disc. But then, the very next day, the military completely retracts the story, hastily claiming it was just a standard weather balloon. This rapid, clumsy pivot created a massive vacuum of public trust. I mean, the seeds of a cover-up were planted right then and there.
Now here's the kicker. There absolutely was a military cover-up at Roswell, but spoiler alert, it had zero to do with aliens. The military was actually scrambling to hide a massive, top-secret Cold War espionage program called Project Mogul. This program used huge trains of high-altitude balloons equipped with sophisticated acoustic sensors to listen for the sound waves of Soviet nuclear detonations across the globe. Flight number 4 of this highly classified project is what crashed on Mac Brazel's ranch. That weather balloon excuse? It was just a desperate lie to protect a vital national security asset from Soviet spies.
And what's so fascinating here is how the legendary details of this crash saucer have totally mundane, earthbound origins. Decades after the crash, stories started circulating about indestructible memory metal that could unfold itself. Well, in reality, this was just the specialized, lightweight radar reflective foil used for the Mogul balloons. Witnesses also famously reported seeing pink and purple alien hieroglyphics on the structural beams of the craft. But an investigation later revealed those beams were held together by adhesive tape that Project Mogul researchers had simply bought from a New York toy manufacturer. Yes, the alien symbols were literally kids' toy designs. The myth didn't just spring up overnight, it was a folk narrative shaped and embellished over decades.
Which brings us to Section 3, the first abduction story.
So Roswell gave us the crashed ship, but it actually didn't give us the gray alien. For that, we gotta jump to 1961 and look at the Betty and Barney Hill case. And we need to look at this with the respect of a detective analyzing a complex psychological cold case. On September 19, 1961, Betty and Barney were driving through New Hampshire when they observed a strange, brightly lit craft hovering silently near their car. They kept driving, but later realized they couldn't account for roughly 2 hours of their journey, a super common phenomenon now known as missing time. 10 days later, Betty began suffering from severe, vivid nightmares of being taken aboard a ship and medically examined by humanoid figures. Now, it is absolutely vital to acknowledge the genuine trauma the Hills experienced here. They were an interracial couple deeply involved in civil rights during the turbulent 1960s, carrying an immense burden of societal stress and anxiety long before that night on the road.
Section 4. Hypnosis and memory distortion.
Desperate for answers about their missing time and Betty's debilitating nightmares, the Hills sought the help of a psychiatrist, Dr. Benjamin Simon, who introduced the really controversial practice of regressive hypnosis. Under hypnosis, both Betty and Barney recounted terrifying experiences of abduction. I want you to hear this raw quote from Barney during a session. "Oh, those eyes, they're in my brain. Please, can I wake up?" This raw terror emphasizes a hugely important point. The Hills were not hoaxers. They weren't lying. They genuinely believed and felt the terror of what they were describing. But, and this is a big but, believing a memory is real does not scientifically prove that the event actually happened. And this timeline reveals a stunning example of cultural cross-contamination. Under hypnosis, Barney described his abductors as having massive wraparound eyes, a detail completely missing from Betty's initial nightmares. So why the eyes? Well, on February 10, 1964, the sci-fi show The Outer Limits aired an episode titled The Belarus Shield, featuring an alien with highly unusual wraparound eyes. Just 12 days later, on February 22nd, Barney Hill described those exact same eyes under hypnosis for the very first time. I mean, this suspicious 12-day gap strongly points to television just infiltrating his subconscious.
This is absolutely crucial for us to understand. Science shows us exactly how human memory rewrites itself. Hypnosis is not a tape recorder. You don't just hit play on objective truth. It places patients in a highly suggestible state where the brain blurs the lines between real events, dreams, and pop culture. Dr. Simon himself theorized that Betty's intense nightmares literally became the template for their shared hypnotic memories. On top of that, researchers have proposed the mother hypothesis, which suggests that the image of the gray alien, a large face with huge staring eyes, is actually a deeply buried instinctual residual memory of a mother's face as perceived by an infant. We aren't remembering aliens from space. We are remembering our own distorted psychology.
All right, let's look at the modern era in Section 5, the science of UFOs.
Obviously, sightings didn't just stop in the 1960s. So how do actual aerospace scientists and military intelligence handle unidentified anomalous phenomena, or UAPs, today? When modern military aviators or civilians report them, they often describe impossible speeds or completely erratic movements. But think about when a meteor streaks across the sky, or a distant commercial jet catches the light just right. Our eyes, and honestly our cameras too, are incredibly easy to trick. Without clear reference points, relative motion and atmospheric optical effects can make a distant conventional object appear to hover, maneuver, or totally defy physics. Human perception is simply not a finely calibrated scientific instrument. When groups like the Department of Defense's ARRO division or NASA actually apply a rigorous scientific framework to UAP sightings, the extraterrestrial hypothesis just kind of fades away. The vast majority of these events are perfectly explainable. They are basically the chaff of our modern skies. Weather balloons, commercial drones, optical sensor glitches, or just really unusual weather phenomena. We have completely cluttered our atmosphere with technology, and inevitably, some of it goes misidentified by observers on the ground or up in the air. And this brings us to a really foundational quote from a recent NASA independent study on UAPs. The language of scientists is data. Period. Eyewitness accounts, no matter how sincere or credible the observer is, just aren't reproducible. You can't put a story into a lab and test it. To truly chart the unknown, we have to move past anecdotes and rely on calibrated, high-quality instrument data. And so far, after decades of rigorous investigation, that data has yielded exactly zero evidence of extraterrestrial technology. So, what does this all mean? If the crashed saucers are actually spy balloons and the alien faces are just a mashup of sci-fi television and childhood psychology, why do we hold on so tightly to these myths? Perhaps our enduring fascination with aliens isn't really about looking out into the cosmos at all. Perhaps it's a mirror reflecting our own anxieties, our hopes, and the incredible, powerful, and sometimes deeply flawed machine that is the human mind. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep questioning what you see.
Thanks for watching.